Alrighty, back in triceps today. We're going to be starting off with this chest supported row movement. And again, using wrist straps here for all of my back movements. If you're not using wrist straps, you're really missing out. You can get super cheap pairs online, so just go and find some if you can. It's really going to help your development. And again, with all these videos, I emphasize this, but I am going to say it once again. Focus on bracing. Focus on having as perfect form as you can from the first rep to the last. If you rewind the video, look at my first rep, and then go and watch my last rep, they should be near identical in form. Now the speed may change. You're going to notice that it's going to get more difficult for me to perform the movement, but form-wise, it should really not decay. We don't want to increase that risk for injury. We want to get as much growth as we can. Now, it's kind of ironic. Every time I record these videos, the movement that I usually do for my back is taken. So, this is not usually what I do, but any lat biased movement is going to work here. The first movement that I did is going to be predominantly upper back, working on, mainly the rhomboids. And then the second movement that I do is generally going to be a little bit more lat focused. So that's what I'm doing here. This kind of old TikTok style single arm lat crunch. If you were on TikTok back like a year or two ago, this was the rave. Everybody was loving it. So I thought I'd kind of go back to it here since the machine that I usually use was taken today. And with this one, you don't have to put your hand on your side like I am. I'm not doing it for the mind-muscle connection. It just feels better to brace that way for me. So it's just kind of personal preference. But again, breathing through all these movements. And as you can see, reps are slowing a little bit, but it shouldn't be something where my form is going. I'm not leaning forward or to the side. I'm not, fighting to keep the weight in my hand or anything. Now into rope face pulls here. I have it set up a little bit higher than usual. I wanted to test it to see if I felt a little bit more comfortable in this position. I don't usually have discomfort whenever I do it with a lower setting, but I do notice that when I do it this way, I get a little bit more rear delt activation. Generally speaking, you want your elbows to be along the shoulder path or slightly below to target your rear delts, comparative to like an overhead manner that a lot of people do with the face pulls. And so having the height of the cable higher is a little bit more helpful for me in that. And then we have an overhead tricep extension. I'm really trying to work on bringing my arms up. It's definitely a weak point for me. And so having these in my program has really helped because I can put a lot of focus and a lot of work into really driving upwards and getting as much tricep development as I can. And again, same thing here. I'm bracing my core. I'm working on my breathing. I'm trying not to let my form decay at all. It's slowing, but it's not going to decay. And on that one, could I have maybe like squeaked it up if I, made my form absolutely terrible? Sure, but I'm not trying to risk injury, and also I'm not trying to build up on any unnecessary fatigue. Going into this rope push down here, the last movement of the day, really focusing on trying to keep those elbows slightly away from my body, driving those wrists down, and trying to get a full extension on the bottom. And yeah, I will be doing a car talk right after this, so stay tuned for that if you want some more information on the topic of nutrition. Okay, lift done. And for this post-gym talk, I kind of wanted to touch on something that I had put on my story this morning. If you don't follow me on Instagram, make sure to follow me there. I'm more consistent posting there than anywhere else, so that's where you get the most content from me. But I posted about how a lot of people definitely get bored of the foods that they're eating, especially if they're on like a meal plan per se, or they're having a diet. You constantly see it with people who are, vegetarian, vegan, keto, whatever it is. When you limit the amount of food options you have, it's kind of difficult to be creative enough to always think of new food options. And so you kind of fall into these habits of always eating the same things. Then you get bored, then you get flavor fatigue, and then you start eating things that aren't necessarily on plan, okay? So I talked about how you can kind of get around that by not having to think of new recipes or go out and buy different things from the store, but just switch a couple things or one thing every time that you eat something. So the comparison that I did was about how I have a little bit of yogurt, granola, and fruit. That's like my parfait breakfast that I have nearly every single morning. And if you wanted to just eat the same yogurt, the same fruit, the same granola every single day, you could. But for me, what's helpful is switching those every single day or every single week or every single month or whatever, just kind of whenever I need a little change, just switch one of those things out or a couple. What that could look like is regular yogurt, let's use strawberry this time. Let's use blueberry. Let's use cheesecake. Like, they have a million different flavors of yogurt, right? So you can do like so many different options with those. Granola, maybe you want to, switch the brand. Maybe there's ones that are like larger pieces. Maybe there's smaller piece ones. Maybe there's ones that have, nuts or fruit in it, whatever else, right? And then for the fruit that I use, maybe you want to go from strawberries to blueberries. Maybe you want to go for mango or whatever else, right? Like, it doesn't matter what you're trying to go for. Just switch a couple things, or maybe your main meal for lunch is, you have like a hamburger and fries, but you make it low calorie. And I've posted about that before. But let's say you want to go for like chicken burger. So you switch it out for like a grilled chicken patty. You put some like honey mustard sauce on it. So instead of like a burger with barbecue sauce, that's completely changing the burger. And then on the side, you go sweet potato fries instead of regular fries. Boom. You just completely changed your lunch in terms of taste, but it's not any harder or any easier. It's the same thing. You just made a couple substitutions. And you can do this for literally every single meal essentially that you can think of. And it helps you to then be more consistent because you're doing the same monotonous things of making the same foods, but they don't taste the same. You're slightly changing things every single time. Maybe you change the sauces and that's enough for you. Maybe you change the, seasonings that you use, like the dry seasonings. Maybe that's enough. You go for maybe more of like a Cajun style, and then the next time you go for more barbecue style or whatever else. These are all just options that you have, right? You don't need to take this approach. I know there's a lot of people that can, just like eat like a dog, so to speak. They eat the same things every single day and they get away with it. And for a lot of bodybuilders, that works for them. They're consistent. They're kind of OCD about this stuff. And so when they do that, it works. But I know for the people that I work with are predominantly more general population and not people going for a contest prep. That doesn't work for them, right? Maybe they have kids or, other family members that they cook for, and they can't eat the same things every day. So they'd have to make a separate meal. That's a lot more work. That's hard to stay consistent than whatever else, right? Or, they're just like, they don't have that drive that the bodybuilders do. And that's perfectly fine. You got a different job. Again, you got other hobbies, whatever else, right? Like, it's not your full-time job to be a bodybuilder, so I get that you're not as devoted to it, and that's perfectly fine. So that's where I come in as a coach and I say, hey, let's change these couple things around, or, let's switch your dinner meal for your lunch meal. That way, it's just that little bit of change, that little bit of break from the monotony that keeps you going, and it keeps you not going off plan. And there's nothing wrong with going off plan every now and then. I talk about this constantly, that everything in moderation is okay, but if your version of moderation is you hate your meal plan, and so every single day you're cheating on your diet just a little bit, that adds up. Or like, the mental toll that it has of having to eat food that you don't like, it's just not fun, right? Like, I've been there. So that's where I kind of thought of this approach. And this isn't original, I'm not saying that I invented this, right? But it came to me, and I've been working, this way through my own goals of trying to lose weight right now, or my clients' goals of whatever they have. And it's been helpful for them and helpful for me because it's not doing the same thing every single day. I know a lot of motivational speakers or bodybuilders or other people talk about, you just got to grind, you just got to get it done, do the hard thing. But the hard thing doesn't need to be eating the food. The hard thing should be getting to the gym and pushing yourself hard. That should be the hard thing. It shouldn't be the hydration. It shouldn't be the sleep. It shouldn't be the stress management. It shouldn't be the supplementation. That stuff should be easy, right? That stuff should be in the back of your mind. You should be mainly focusing on, when I go to the gym, I'm going to demolish my back and biceps, or I'm going to demolish my legs, or whatever it is. That should be your focus, because that's what requires the most focus in all, in mental capacity, but also physical. Like, the systemic fatigue, the body toll that it puts on you, you should be focused on that. You shouldn't be focusing on the meal that you're having after or before. And, that's a great thing with coaching, is if you have a coach, they kind of do that for you. And, this isn't me, trying to plug myself here that everybody needs a coach. I don't think that everyone does. There's plenty of people who get away with not having one. But if you're someone who struggles with the consistency, or you struggle with the motivation, or you just want to take out the guesswork, working with a coach is great, because they do all that for you. You just have to do what they tell you then. Essentially, you're a student and they're the teacher. They say, do this homework, you do the homework. And if you do the homework, you get results if they're a good coach. So yeah, that's kind of what I wanted to talk about today, is breaking the monotony of food. And the same thing can be applied to your workouts. I know a lot of people get bored when it comes to their workouts, and for that, I would have to do a whole nother conversation, so I'm not going to delve too deep into that. But I mainly wanted to talk about the nutrition component today, because I feel like that's where a lot of people struggle. I mean, if you look at the United States when it comes to obesity rates, I mean, that's definitely the issue, is food, not as much activity, because you can't outwork a bad diet. It is so much easier to consume food than it is to burn food. So unless you're like, you know, one of those people who does like, you know, the 200 milers or 100 milers, you're like an insane endurance athlete, you can't get away with just eating whatever you want. Most people can't. And so you have to find ways of making the food that you eat enjoyable, but also work for you, not against you. You know, if my diet, you know, people talk about like you can lose weight on anything. That's 100% true. But if my diet was just McDonald's or insert whatever fast food junk place that you want here, right? I'm sure you can get a healthy option just about anywhere. There's a million people, including myself, that post about how you can make, you know, low calorie, high protein meals at any fast food place. And I'm not trying to demonize fast food. What I am saying though, is that if most of your diet is consistent of fast food, it's going to be hard. They're calorie dense and not very high volume for the most part. Generally speaking, they're higher in fats. Generally speaking, they're lower in protein. And so you're not going to feel as full. You're going to feel a little bit more lethargic because you're not getting as much carbohydrates as you need for a healthy, active person, which is your primary fuel source when you're working out. It's not fats, it's not protein, it's carbohydrates. And so as much as protein is important, you need those carbs. And if you're replacing those carbs with fats in your diet, your workouts are going to suffer. In turn, you're not going to get as much results. In turn, you're not going to put on as much muscle, which again, we're compounding here. When you put on muscle, guess what? That's more calories you get to eat because it's more frame that you have. It's more body that then needs calories. As a larger person, you can eat more calories. So guess what? The more consistent you are over time, the more leeway you actually get down the road. If a person is 150 pounds and they're predominantly muscle, and then another person is 250 pounds and they're predominantly muscle, guess who gets to eat more and still stay the same weight or lose weight? It's the 250 pound person. So your goal, if you are trying to, you know, get in shape, is to get to a point where you're comfortable with your body fat, which again requires eating, you know, and it's something that's hard to manage, but if you can, you know, get to the point where you're at a low enough body fat percentage where you're comfortable. And then from there, it's trying to put on muscle, because that just makes everything so much easier when you put on muscle. And I know people are worried about, oh, you know, I don't want to get too bulky or whatever else. It's like trying to say that you accidentally became a NASCAR driver when you were learning to drive. It's that difficult to just put on pounds of muscle. Like, that's the comparison that I can drive, because it takes consistency, it takes effort, it takes an understanding of what you're doing, it takes a lot of components that you can't just fall into on accident. You're not just gonna accidentally wake up one day and you're gonna be 30 pounds heavier. It just doesn't happen like that. So don't be worried about putting on too much size and getting too bulky. For the most part, the average American could do with a little bit more muscle on their frame and then a lot of weight loss for their ideal look. Just losing weight itself is just gonna make you look like a skinnier or maybe saggier version of yourself. If you don't have that muscle underneath your skin to hold tight to the skin that you have, all it's just gonna be is loose skin whenever you lose the weight. So you need a little bit of muscle in order to actually keep that shape that you're looking for, whether it be that hourglass or that Dorito or whatever you wanna compare it to. You know, you have to put on a little bit of size in order for that to show through when you lose weight. So it's a combination of both. But I kind of went a little off topic there. But again, just manage your nutrition. I know it's difficult, it's not easy, but understand that it is a means to an end. If you're just trying to lose weight, then you can just maintain if that's your only goal. If you're trying to put on muscle mass after that, it just comes down to what I've talked about, being consistent with your diet, but you can change some variables. So if you have any questions about it, leave them in the comments below. I love talking about this stuff. If you have any questions that I feel like deserve, you know, like a full-blown video like this, I will 100% make it. So don't be shy to leave that. If you liked this form of content, like it, give it a like or a subscription. That really helps me out to know that what I'm making and the style that I'm doing right now is what people want to see. So yeah, if you have any questions, feel free to ask. Peace.